Good morning, and I welcome everyone to this Economic Growth Board. I'm just going to hand over to Wendy with regard to the appointment of the chair.
Everyone, we have no permanent, sorry, scrap that. We're here. The first point of task we need to do today is to appoint Councillor Bob Slay to chair this specific meeting, and to note that Councillor Stephen Simpkins has been appointed by the Mayor as the portfolio lead for the Economy and Innovation portfolio, and will assume the chair of the board with effect from its next meeting. Is everybody content with that?
Agreed.
Thank you. I think Councillor Simpkins he was here a moment ago, but there we go. That's fine. Okay, we only have 90 minutes assigned for this meeting this morning, so I just want to move the business as fast as we can. Obviously, some important issues. Can I take apologies, please, Wendy?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Cotton, Councillor Duggins, Councillor Piper, Anita Barler and Mike Wright. Thank you.
Thank you. I've also received apologies this morning by way of text from Andy Street, who unfortunately can't make himself available this morning as he got other pressing matters. I therefore go through declaration of interest. If any members are reminded of the need to declare any disclosable prejudicial interests that they have in any item discussed during the course of the meeting, in addition to receipt of any gift or hospitality, should be declared where the value of it was thought to have exceeded £25 or £40 of hospitality. Are there any declarations of interest? None indicated. I welcome people on the screen. Again, we'll watch the screens, but if you wish to speak, if you can raise your hand in the normal way, we'll take your contributions accordingly. I have no chair's remarks. The minutes have been previously forwarded to you as item 5 in the papers. There are a number of updates to give. The issue of quorum of this body was dealt with at the last meeting, and in fact we've meet today on the basis of the new quorum requirements, which is for 4 voting members. Councillor Court made an issue with regard to representation through the business community, and that will be dealt with through a policy the governance team is currently developing. So I just wanted to assure you that that had also been dealt with. Most other items, as I see, are covered within the agenda this morning, so we'll proceed accordingly. The first substantive paper at item 6 is the economic conditions for the West Midlands. Can I suggest that we assume that everyone has read the paper in detail, and if there are any points that we wish to raise, but we will take the paper as read. Are any specific points or questions related to that, then Jonathan I'll pass to and he will give us any answers. Councillor Courts.
Yes, it's not specifically on that. I mean, you can assume the papers are read, but I really do think it's time we started bringing the papers to a manageable set. This is one of a number of different sets of papers I have. You know, I can have 2 or 3 of these sort of meetings a day. We really need to focus on the points that matter, and there is absolutely no need, nor business justification, nor is it efficient to have a set of papers that's 100 pages or more. You know, so you know, and the attendance, we struggle with quality at these meetings, and attendance is poor, and I do wonder whether that's part and parcel of that is the length of the papers. We need some brevity. We need to not be told what are the real issues that we need to, and you know, and in terms of data, what the trend line is doing, and that should be capable of being done in a few paragraphs, not in 100-odd pages.
Thanks for that. Councillor Simpkins, I'll hand over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just with regards to the claimant count figures. We look at them with our own city, and some of them are really misleading, especially when they're badged under universal credit. So I think we need to do more work. And what's difficult as it moves and it fluctuates is zero-hour contracts. Zero-hour contracts actually skew the figures. But that 0-hour contracts is misery for people who've got work for 1 month and not the next. So what we need to do is come up with a plan that formulates where we have sustainable employment moving forward for the West Midlands. So if we could look at the employment figures with regards to universal credit, because a lot of it's lost In universal credit, there is in-work, but that's an in-work benefit. But we need to make sure that we strip that out.
Anyone wish to comment on that? I mean, we can take the matter forward from this meeting through the minutes, Councillor Simpkins, if you so wish. Is that what you're proposing?
I'm happy to take it to the next meetings, but we really do need to get real drill down to them figures, because that don't give a reflection. One, it don't give a true reflection of Wolverhampton. Two, I think it'll give a true reflection of the whole of the combined authority.
Okay, noted accordingly in the minutes. Any other questions or points of clarification on the papers? Councillor Courts.
Yeah, I just wonder in terms of youth unemployment, which is a real problem. It's for us in North Solihull and across through into Birmingham. Trends don't seem to be getting any better, and I just wonder whether as a focus item we really need to look at this, and whether there's any comments from officers about potential action streams on this.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you want to come in? And then I know Charlie's on the screen, as I understand it. Is that right? Just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry, Charlie. I'll take Jonathan first, Charlie, then I'll come back to you. Give me a second.
Yep. So particularly in respect of the youth unemployment challenge, I know that's one dimension that certainly our colleagues working on the kind of skills activity to be able to knit together both the direct levers and activities that the combined authority has, but much more important here is the kind of convening power that kind of other organisations have as well. And so throughout, I think, this agenda, particularly when we get onto some of the kind of later items, that they'll be looking at how we can kind of really target some of those levers that we do have to be able to address that activity. Particularly important is being able to kind of knit together that power that both combined authority, local authorities, colleges, other partners have to be able to address that. But certainly, I think the kind of hotspot issue that both Councillor Simpkins and Courts have raised about that this isn't a kind of evenly spread challenge. It's very much a kind of about the hotspot activity, and really through the kind of the data, the analysis that we've done brings that to bear.
Charlie, do you want to come in? Is it on Councillor Simpkins' point or Councillor Courts?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Simpkins, just quickly in terms of, my colleague Scott, who leads on our kind of skills and labour market stuff, has been doing a lot of work on that kind of deep dive across the employment activity and also the claimant. So I'm happy to share. We have like an online link with a lot of analysis which aims to go into, which is kind of the so what, the who and the why, and then the kind of different spatial features as well. So I'm happy to share that, and that's obviously been developed. Well, it has been developed with Combined Authority in hand and kind of related to all the skills activity that Jonathan's just mentioned.
Councillor Simpkins, do you want to come back, or is that fine?
As long as the analysis then gives us options for what we can do to change the situation, especially with the scourge of, and I do say scourge of 0 hour contracts, because it puts a burden on all of us across the West Midlands.
Fine. Councillor Courts, you want to come back?
Yes, I just want to pursue the point on youth unemployment. I mean, one of the things you didn't mention was the private sector. Now, we know for every pound of public money that goes in, the potential for the private sector is much greater. Now, consistently, as we've brought the LEPs into combined authority, I've made the point about representation from business and the key point of business. There is a skill shortage out there. The potential for bringing young people on, training young people, is vast. Now, I want to see us take action in terms of engaging with employers, because there will be some out there that hadn't thought about it. So this needs to focus, and it's the private sector that in the end will fix this, not ourselves. Can we just log that as a point of action, please?
Yeah, we'll do that within the minutes. I'm going to put Ed on next. Ed, please.
Yeah, just wanted to respond to Councillor Court's initial point, and I thought it might also be important just to introduce myself. I know many people around the table, because I've been at the Combined Authority for over 3 years, but I've only very recently picked up the economy portfolio. So I'm Exec Director for Strategy, Economy and Net Zero. And I wanted to say that I'm very conscious of the points that Councillor Courts has made, both specifically about the economic conditions report and more generally about the whole reports pack. There's a couple of things that we're now working as a team to try and address. One is that we have a single report on economic conditions in the West Midlands that is a monthly report that has exactly what you're asking for, a kind of cover note that has the key headlines within it. At the moment, there are various agencies and organisations, and they are all producing reports, and they're all very good actually, but we're trying to pull together something that summarises and brings together all of those, including the dashboard, which is already a first step towards that kind of summary approach. So we're trying to take steps to do that. But that's not to say that other people's reports aren't fundamentally important. They're all for slightly different audiences. They need to continue, but for this meeting and for combined authority purposes, we will have a kind of single clearer report. Second thing to say is that I'm conscious that we've got a lot of items on the agenda. There is a real challenge because there is a lot going on, and quite rightly, there's a lot going on, and this board needs to know about the amount of effort that is going in, particularly that using public funding, and so that we're accountable for those things. So it's hard to drive down the number of items on each agenda, but I will try and manage that as effectively as I can. So perhaps not hearing reports on every aspect of work every time, but making sure they come on a regular cycle. And then on the point on sort of long reports, again, it's always very difficult to get the balance between a short report where then you're suddenly asking for lots more information, or a report which has got more information and then it's not sufficiently succinct. But there are ways we can improve on that. I fully accept that, and we'll keep working hard to do that.
I think it is a plea that we've heard on a number of occasions through other leaders as well. I think if Councillor Bird were here, he'd be echoing those words. Fine. Yeah, I think Adrian Andrews is smiling, so he knows that's a salient point. Do you want to bring a point up, Adrian?
Yeah. Oh, can you hear me? That's a bit loud. Just on the as elected members, we can be very cynical, you see, on that long reports. If officers want to hide something, they give us a long report. If they don't want to hide anything, it's a very short report. That's just a very cynical thing that elected members who are long in the tooth might say. I think on the youth unemployment side of things, I think it'd be useful just to do a bit of a wash up on what has been happening in the particular authorities and the particular boroughs over the years on youth unemployment. For example, in Walsall, we've got Walsall Works that's been operating for over 10 years. We've got the Black Country Ladder, that's been a very successful partnership between the 4 Black Country boroughs with the Express and Star. We've also got Kickstart, and I think what would be quite helpful to understand from that perspective is how the apprenticeship levy is being spent across the piece, both by local authorities and the bigger employers within the region.
Thank you. We'll note that in the minutes. Fine. Councillor Simpkins, please.
Just on that issue about lengthy reports, yeah, everybody's an individual and you want what you want, but wouldn't it be easier if we did have an overview of the stuff that has to be done, the daily business, but have a themed event? Youth unemployment seems to be jumping off the page for us to do that, so as we can do that in smaller pieces moving forward, I mean, that'll be left to the members to decide which way they want to move it in that regard. But the biggest issue for me is youth unemployment, but also productivity, which drives one and the other. Yeah, no.
Thank you. Can we move on the report? It's for noting. Sorry, Jonathan. Oh, Colin, I didn't catch you. My fault.
Hi there. No, just on the youth unemployment, I do think a bit of a deep dive in some of these issues to come up with some actions on youth unemployment would be a good idea, because the apprenticeship issues are huge at the moment. Apprenticeship numbers are way down right across the country for most private providers, and particularly in the West Midlands at the moment. They're almost half the rate of last year in many areas. So we've got youth unemployment on one side, some brilliant apprenticeship opportunities on the other, and we're just not connecting those two things together. So coming up with some practical actions we could all agree and work on together in the deep dive on youth unemployment might be quite useful.
Thank you, Corinne. Noted. Okay, I'm going to take the report then. It's for noting. I think we had a good debate on it, so we'll take it as read and we'll make those points within the minutes. We now move to item 7. It's a deeper devolution deal. Economic elements, including the strategic productivity partnership. I've got Jonathan's name against this. Is that right, Jonathan? Over to you.
That's right, Councillor Slade. I'll keep the opening comments brief, given the direction to start this meeting. So Since agreeing the devolution deal in the spring, we've been working intensively with local authorities, partners across government, our partners within the region, and also colleagues in Greater Manchester to be able to scope out the kind of full opportunity of three principal economic and business aspects of that devolution deal. The report provides an update on each of those, and also importantly connects to some of the other major levers that we have through that deal, so particularly around the outcomes framework and then flowing on to the single regional settlement. So the purpose of the report really is to give that kind of holistic picture, both about the progress of each of those individual kind of aspects of the deal, and I'll go on to those very briefly in a second, but really the kind of question and ask of this board is whether the kind of direction taken across the piece is correct, and on a couple of particular specific areas, whether you're kind of happy with the detail that is being pursued so far. So first of all, to drill into the productivity issue, which Councillor Simpkins raised, the main vehicle for kind of driving this forward is through something called a strategic productivity partnership with government, and based on the work that this board kind of agreed, something called the kind of theory of change that we had to underpin our original negotiations with government last summer, and also the 2021 business support review that this board kind of commissioned and oversaw a couple of years ago. The proposal there and the direction is that the strategic productivity partnership, through the kind of suggested terms of reference that will be jointly agreed with government. So the kind of question is whether this board is happy to kind of endorse that as almost a West Midlands position, but the decision there is jointly with government, about understanding what we want to achieve through that productivity partnership with government officials. The second category is on innovation. And here we explain the focus of kind of that relationship with government is much more about making ministerial level connections, about how government and its agencies, particularly UK Research and Innovation, can be able to kind of work differently with particularly those research heavy institutions, particularly universities, but not just universities, catapults and other kind of partners across the region, to really succeed in the big challenge we have to drive up public investment in R&D across the region, because we know we have an already strong private sector investment power there. The third element, working with colleagues, excuse me, in the growth company, is on some of the trade investment activity, and I'd kind of invite Katie to be able to explain.
Just before you do that, can I just make a reference to the terms of reference, which are at page 31? And I think we do need to agree that that is the appropriate way forward. So I just want to highlight that, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Katie's going to do the WMIS strategy for us.
Thank you. So just to update you that good progress is being made on the development of the international strategy for the region. You may remember one of the key elements of the devolution deal was that strategy would be co-developed with government, and I'm pleased to say that the Department for Business and Trade has been involved in every step of the way so far with us on its development. So there have been two stages really so far. So we've been doing a lot of work on evidence gathering and data analysis led by OCO Global, and then also engagement led by Metro Dynamics with key partners across the region, including all of the local authorities, combined authority universities, chambers, Birmingham Airport, and other of our anchor institutions as well. So the result of this work has come together in a strategic framework, which starts to begin to consider objectives and strategic opportunities for the strategy around the 4 pillars of trade, investment, innovation, and the visitor economy. However, through the discussions that we have had, it's been really clear that we need to do a lot of further work around these and further debate really on the detail. And this was very evident at the Growth Company Board, where we discussed it earlier on this week. It was a very interesting conversation that Councillor Courts and Councillor Andrew were part of. And I think there was some positive views coming through, but also some constructive challenge as well that we very much need to take on board. So as set out in the report, what we're proposing now is, rather than bring something here that we know needs much further work, we're going to look to bring a green paper to you at your November meeting for you to consider. This will allow us to do some more engagement in the run up to that time, including with all of you as politicians as well, and all of our wider stakeholders. We will then, if you agree with that green paper, be able to do some further engagement after that, with a view to having a final strategy coming through to this meeting in March, and really importantly, a delivery plan as well. And I think that's where the real benefit with this will be, particularly with government co-developing this with us to bind them into that shared set of priorities. And then the other part, just wanted to update you on and seek your agreement on around the trade and investment side of the deal, is around the growth company being recognised as the lead agency for trade and investment for the combined authority area, and also for the CA geography being adopted as the economic geography in relation to DBT analysis and work as well. So this issue was considered by the CA board back in January as part of the LEP integration plan, but the decision taken then didn't wholly align in terms of wording with what the Department of Business Trade is seeking for in relation to the deal, hence bringing it back to you here now, because what we're having at the moment is DBT, despite LEP integration with the combined authority, are still working on a 3 LEP geography basis, and this means that the region isn't being promoted internationally at its full economic scale, so we're missing out on being competitive with other locations, and it also means that the growth company isn't aware of all the kind of potential leads that are coming through to the region and can't always support partners to make the best case in terms of landing them. So we're very keen to get your agreement to these kind of the formality of us being the lead agency through today's meeting. And I should just reassure you that Growth Company being the lead agency certainly doesn't affect the close relationship working we have with all of you as local authorities and the combined authority and other partners as well. It just means that we can be the funnel of that information through to our officers and others too.
Thank you. Any further contributions or the questions? Not on the screen that I can see. Okay. Any comments, Councillor Courts?
Yeah, just in support of what Katie said, we did indeed have a robust conversation at the Growth Board, and I think it was a very productive one. I think my big concern is we need to just focus what we're about here. And I mean, interesting delivery plan. Well, delivery is what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, there are 2 or 3 key issues, though. I mean, question mark, we can have a lovely discussion here about what is the region, but internationally, frankly, that is really not important. They see the UK, they see, you know, it doesn't stop at the 7 Mets and what's around, and we need to use every asset that we have anywhere near us to promote what we have in the area. The second point is, you know, I'm a big fan of saying, what is it we're trying to sell? You know, what's our product and where's our customer, and it's connecting to that is marketing, and that is what this is all about. So my own belief is that the 7 Mets, you know, they each have a bundle of stuff that they want to sell. It's partly, it may be real estate, it may be sites, but it's also services, companies that want to develop their services. And you know, IT is a good example of that, but business delivery as well. You know, we need to be very clear that's what we're about to sell, and make a clear statement from each of the Mets as to this is what we're trying to sell and promote. And that's really where you start with all this. And I think you know, I'm pleased that Katie and the team, you know, they've taken on board all these things and will make progress. But I see, like papers, I see things fairly simply. You know, if you can't fit it on a decent envelope, you know, we've lost the plot. So, okay, that's my contribution. Thank you,
Corinne, please.
Yeah, thanks to the international work, Katie. I think it's a really good piece of work, and I think the sooner we get down to delivery on a lot of this work, the happier we'll all be with this work, won't we? It's excellent. Just on the productivity part, I had a good conversation with Jonathan about this new productivity partnership. 100% think it's a great idea. We do need to make sure we don't make it too academic, though, don't we? Because one of our big challenges in the West Midlands is how we engage those lower tier businesses to engage in innovation and productivity work. So, you know, how we get them engaged, how we do it with demonstrator units in different ways, you know, get them understanding new technology will be key to success of this, not always focus on the big business. And the second comment really is, in a week where we've had real divisions over our approach to net zero, I think it's really important that we as a region keep a steady eye on being exemplars in the net zero issues. So when we're talking about productivity and innovation, then we're talking about driving productivity and innovation through the net zero agenda. And we can be an exemplar nationally on this work if other people are wavering.
Thank you. Helpful. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, oh, sorry, that is loud, isn't it? I just wanted to come back on the innovation piece, particularly just to report back from the innovation board. We talked a lot about engagement through the science parks, and I think coming back to Councillor Court's point about engagement with business and how we get more business voice into some of these conversations, we thought that was a really important area. And I think also just to stress that the devolution deal with innovation is very much focusing on strengths and opportunities. Again, coming back to what Councillor Courts was saying about what have we got to sell as a region, what are our real strengths. But I think actually listening to what was talked about earlier with youth unemployment, we've got an opportunity to join those two up, I think, and actually potentially if we are doing a deep dive on youth unemployment, what are our innovation sectors, our growing sectors, and how can we link some of those skills that are needed? So yeah, I just wanted to report back on that.
Thank you. Councillor Simpkins, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what we need to do is make sure that the partnership actually delivers what we want it to deliver. And I don't really see which way that's going to move. What concerns me is it's top down or bottom up, because business support in this city, we got an handle on. What concerns me in that aspect of this is, where's the sustainable funding moving forward? I don't see that that's a part of that in this moving forward. I don't see that the business support is part of the devolution in this. That would give us some more sustainability. I just want us to set achievable targets for us to do, but I also would like that it's driven by each individual constituent member that then formulates the strategic plan, because we know what's best in our own councils. So we should be at the forefront of that. That would formulate the strategic plan. What concerns me is the lack of funding moving forward, because we've just lost all the EU funding, and that's a remarkable difference than what we've got to do with, especially with the UK Prosperity Fund. So how do we? I think we might be setting ourselves up to fail here, but I don't want us to do that. Ever before that business needs support, it's now. We've got low productivity, high inflation, high interest rates. That's why you can see why there's a lack of investment moving forward. It's a risky time, but I do really think that we should be at the forefront of formulating our own individual business support moving forward in that space. And the productivity, and I would say that the productivity and the youth unemployment and the skills gap mirror each other. And that's strange. We need to really look at that.
Thank you. Ed.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on Councillor Simpkins' points, because I think you're absolutely right. But I think we need to put this all in some context. I was part of trying to negotiate this deeper devolution deal in the first place, and the relevant departments, it was BEIS at the time, and the Department for Trade, were completely against having anything at all in the devolution deal on these topics. And through the negotiation process, ourselves and Greater Manchester wheedled out what we all accept are relatively poor, compared to what we were asking for, relatively poor and kind of piecemeal packages. So the Strategic Productivity Partnership, the Strategic Innovation Partnership, and the International strategy were the kind of three things that we could just about get them to concede. But just as Councillor Simpkins says, we've now got to drive them for whatever. No other combined authority other than Greater Manchester has got these things, so we've now got to absolutely maximise what we can get out of them. And we are doing a dance with government at the moment to set up these things in the best way that we can, if you see what I mean, given that they didn't want them in the first place. Where I am trying to offer some sort of leadership in this space is to say that the Strategic Productivity Partnership has absolute, whatever else it talks about, and Corinne's right to say, let's not make it an academic exercise. whatever else we drive out of it, we have got to get that long-term commitment to more funding for business support. And we'll come on to the business support package in the next item on the agenda. But that has got to be our focus. Is whatever else we talk about with government, we've got to get that long-term funding for business support. In relation to the strategic innovation partnership, again, all kinds of lovely things that we can talk about. And Sarah talked, we've got lots of great ideas about how we take forward innovation in the West Midlands, but ultimately we've got to nail that growing proportion of research R&D funding. So that has got to be the single aim ultimately of that partnership. And then in relation to the international strategy, I think we're actually doing a much that is a better, more grown-up conversation insofar as it's driving it. But if we can agree what Katie's asking for us to agree today, then again, that will be a big step forward in terms of our relationship with the relevant department there. So we just need to keep this in context, if you see what I mean. We are making incremental improvements and it's driving our own strategy and delivery activity, but no other combined authority has got these steps that we've got in our hands.
Thank you. Any further comments before I move the paper? No. We have 3 decisions to make, or we've commented actually on and endorsed the economic rationale and approach to the strategic productive partnership. Terms of reference are at page 31. You'll recognise that from a governance perspective, the EGB has responsibilities reported back to us. So hopefully that can be agreed. We agree the terms of reference at 2, and we endorse the approach to the trade and investment strand, including the West Midlands International Strategy, and agree that the West Midlands Growth Company will act as the lead agency for trade and investments on behalf of WMCA. And as I understand it, a green paper will be brought back at a future meeting to scope that out for conversation with this board. Are we all, Councillor Simpkins?
Just one small point that's just been pointed out to me. If you look at the paper on page 32, and it says government will work productively with the combined authority. At the last point, it says business support may. Shouldn't we change that to must? Business support must be part of the West Midlands simplified funding settlement in the future. It's page 32. And the start of the bullet point says government will work productively with the combined authority to put in place structures and mechanisms.
Second bullet point.
There's may. If we're serious, it should say must.
May.
I think we would all be in agreement with the sentiment of that. I can't see why there'd be a particular problem with that.
But that gives us a definite standpoint that where the combined authority sits, it says must work with us.
Just to be clear, this is to do with the single settlement which we're currently negotiating. In our terms of reference, we can push for that, and we absolutely want. We're confident that we will get existing UK SPF as part of the single settlement. What we really want is a lot more going into that local growth pot, if you like, within the single settlement that we're currently negotiating. We can write must because I'm confident that UK SPF or whatever the future is will go into that. But I want to be clear that we need more, if you see what I mean. And to that extent, we will be negotiating for more, but that is not entirely in our hands at this point.
And isn't that the key point? It's a negotiation. So in essence, if you constrain us to must, it slightly constrains the potential for negotiation.
Yeah, Chair, through you, it should be must, because no matter what government is, it's ask for us to support business. So we should have some clear red lines, and I think that's one, that it must, because we're going to be. I'll just think of all the IEDNs that I've signed off in this authority for Aim for Gold, and how much that has put a sustainable footing within our business community moving forward. If we are serious, that's what the semantics are may rather than must.
Councillor Courts.
I'm just wondering whether this is about words, isn't it? And it's aimed at, our action has to be focused, aimed at something like that, at doing those things, recognising that it's not our decision.
Yeah, I think my preference would be to take it as it is, but basically take it away to understand what the implications are of that and bring it back to the next meeting. I think that's what we'll do. And if we have to amend the TOR, then we'll do so accordingly. I just think we need to take wider advice. That's my view.
You can have my personal guarantee that as we negotiate this terms of reference, we will be pushing very hard that it should be must rather than may, but we can't just guarantee that in the meeting right now.
So on that basis, that's what I'm proposing we do. We take it away, we bring it back as an item for action in the minutes, and we have a further conversation when we've got advice. I think that's where we are. All agreed? Thank you. The next item is a verbal report, overall overview on the digital economy workstream presentation. Yanis, I'm sorry, are you on the screen?
Chair, if I can, I just need to try and ensure that Yanis is dialing in correctly. So if can I suggest you move on to the next item? Because
okay, I'll take the next item, which is item 9 on the agenda, to the delivery section, business growth West Midlands. I've got Paul's name against this. Is item 9 on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Just a dense report. Hopefully Councillor Courts agrees. Quite a lot in there, but hopefully short and to the point. I say this every Economic Growth Board, but I particularly want to thank our local authorities and our growth hubs for the shared and excellent working, which hopefully is a good example of how we can bring both the regions and localities and the needs of localities together to achieve a shared goal. I just wanted to highlight 3 quick things in the report. I'm happy to take questions. As I said, it's quite a dense report. We now have August figures for support for businesses, which weren't in the report due to publication deadlines. So August figures in terms of inquiry stayed at July levels, which given the summer break is very positive. And most importantly, and the one that I'm really pleased with, is we had 170 diagnostics in August. So diagnostics is where we work in a detailed way with our businesses to really come up with growth plans and help them to achieve the advice and support that they need. That's all really positive, and it's thanks to our local authorities and the excellent work that they're doing. So thank you all for that. We've also held the event, the launch event, the formal launch event, which I think went very well. Everybody gave good feedback, and as well as a number of attendees, what I was personally really pleased about, and we had over 30 different business support offers at that event, is everybody said they were pleased that new businesses came. So businesses that had not previously engaged with publicly funded business support were there in good numbers. So that I think shows that we're moving in the right direction for that. There's quite a lot of information about what our current regional programmes are and what our offer is to businesses across the region. I won't go through any of that, but happy to take any questions or comments on that, Councillor Slade. And then there are 2 items for the board's view. One is we've been fortunate in the Combined Authority to receive DBT funding for what they call growth hubs. Obviously, everywhere apart from West Midlands Combined Authority still has LEP growth hubs. So with that funding, as we've previously flagged to Economic Growth Board, we're proposing to use that funding to free up additional support to our businesses, and that will be through a small grants pot that is double devolved to our local authorities. The second item is we are looking to establish clearer linkages with the private sector around what the business support offer is, and paragraph, forgive me, the paragraph number 7, I believe it is, highlights that we're looking to set up a strategic advisory group involving the chambers, business representative organisations, banks, some of our management consultants, really to look at what else we need to do in this space and to take their advice and strengthen the offer. That's a real high-level overview, Councillor Slade. I'm happy to take questions on any of the detail.
Okay, I'll take comments. I'm just clarifying the point that you mentioned at 1.2 within the paper, the £380,000 that's been received, and just explain to us again how that will be dealt with regards to Growth Hub.
So the proposal is that funding is used to support the core WMCA team. That team is currently supported by UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So the proposal is that UK Shared Prosperity Fund money is unlocked and given to support our businesses.
Okay, fine. And the other one is item 7 in the papers, which you just highlighted. Strengthening links with private sector offer, 7.1. Yeah, that's the other one you're proposing today. Fine. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, the feedback I've had from the event from businesses was that it was a fantastic event. I think the website as well, the information that gives to businesses in an easily accessible format, the right kind of language. Corin's got his hand up. I don't know if he's going to echo that, but certainly the feedback I've had from businesses has been very, very positive.
Thanks, Sarah. Corin, please.
Well, yeah, just on your points on working with the business, the private community, we're happily going to support that group when it's set up. There's some really good activity taking place across the West Midlands and around business support. One of the best ways of working in the private sector will be about how you commission out to scale that work up rather than delivering that internally sometimes. And I think that group can start to unpick a bit of that with you.
Thank you, Councillor Courts.
Yeah, just in terms of gathering private sector feedback, strategic advisory group, I'm really not sure sometimes that these are the most effective ways. You get people that come from a particular business, but every business is different. Every small and big business, they come in all different shapes and sizes, and so often you get round the table people that represent the company, have their own skill set, have their own opinions. Do you know, if you want to find out what business, I have a one-to-one with a Solihull business more or less every other week. It's 3/4 of an hour. We never had an agenda. The offices have just produced one, but you talk about what needs to be talked about and you find out what's happening. Quite honestly, there's I think it was I don't know, some guru who said management by walking around is how you find out about stuff. And I would urge and recommend that you find a mechanism for engaging with business rather than have groups. I mean, you're probably going to need to do this, but it's not how you're going to find out about what makes business drive.
Thank you, Councillor Simpkins.
Yeah, my concern is the delay of the grant funding. Because we've had such a delay, we're going to have a small window because it's time precious to actually get it out the door. And that really concerns me. How does the single settlement work with regards to having a longer term? Because we need that conversation with businesses so as we can support businesses in that respect. And that will then enhance our growth. And I think we need to, like what Councillor Court says, what's the conversation with us as a combined authority, with the business in general? And because there's lots of small businesses that do need that support moving forward. So I would like us to have a strategy of what happens when we get government funding that comes in late. There's surely a cost to us and cost to business.
Paul, do you want to pick up on the specific grant issues, and I'll pick up on the single settlement and the opportunities going forward?
Thanks, Paul.
So specifically on the grants, obviously we've now received year 2 funding, and all our local authorities are busy getting that money out of the door, I think, subject to contracts. So I think there is a significant wider issue here that we should bring back. And as Ed rightly says, it is linked into the single settlement discussion, but it's linked into DLUC and DLUC delays, as we all know, and we push them hard, which isn't to excuse anything, but I think we don't have the money, we can't spend the money. But I think Councillor Simpkins is right to raise this isn't a sustainable approach to business support in the West Midlands, and we really need to be planning for what happens now.
Yeah, get that. Okay, I'm going to take Ed's point.
So, as regards the single settlement, and forgive me if people are already familiar with this, but just to rehearse the kind of key principles behind the single settlement, government will negotiate with the West Midlands a 5-year block fund, a bit like a departmental settlement, that will, from the next spending review for a 5-year period. In theory, that means that we will get assurance for 5 years of funding against 5 different functions. One of those functions is described as local growth and place, and it is already suggested that what we're currently calling UKSPF, from which we fund business support, will be part of that function. It won't necessarily be called UKSPF at that point, because we will negotiate an amount of money in order to deliver over the course of a 5-year period a set of outcomes which will be broadly described in terms of the way in which we would expect small business productivity to grow. So in theory, that will be a huge opportunity for us to have, not just as regards business support, but actually across a whole range of other combined authority and regional issues, 5 years worth of funding for which we can plan properly. I say in theory because over the course of the next 18 months until the spending review, there is a huge amount of negotiation to go on with government. The first step in that is for us to be able to negotiate a memorandum of understanding, which defines the function. So we need to make sure that business support is clearly defined as part of that function, and that sets out the trajectory as to how we might get some kind of formula, for example, as to how much we should be receiving over that 5-year period, which we think needs to be linked to need in terms of what we need in the West Midlands to deliver those outcomes. So forgive me for just rehearsing that kind of those principles. Obviously, the Combined Authority Board, and indeed we can bring it back on regular occasions to this board, what the local growth in place function is going to look like and how that's going to work. But at the moment, as I say, that we're at the kind of early stages of an 18-month negotiation.
Thank you. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, that thank you for that, Ed. That's really informative. But then we should be having conversations in genuine partnership with businesses across the region to formulate that plan for that 5-year sustainability. And also that what we need to build in from the combined authority side is what do we want to deliver in the future space of business? So it was mentioned earlier about the green economy. Shouldn't that be part of that? Shouldn't we say that, you know, when business support moves forward? So we've got a transition period. I know it, but there's businesses. I talked to our business champions yesterday and they know nothing about it. That's just one example. That's why I'm asking about how do we communicate it? So we need to make sure, and it's not just, it cannot be just the big players in the region. It's got to be how is it then filtered down into the small business support in that respect. But we need to set our objectives from the 7 Mets and also in consultation with the shires of how does that on all these strands. There's lots of work and that's going to be costly. And then when grants do come in from government late, there's a massive rush and it'd be like horse trading. So we need to manage that as well moving forward.
Simply to say, the model that we have in relation to business support is what we describe as a hub and spoke, and therefore your business advisors in Wolverhampton need to be engaging with your small businesses in Wolverhampton in order to provide them that advice. At Combined Authority Board this time last week, we agreed a £24 million business energy advice scheme, which is precisely about how people transition to cleaner ways of working, and if your business advisors are doing their job well, which I'm assuming they are, then they will be informing your SMEs about opportunities through that BEAS programme. So that's how the system should be working. We need to just make sure that it does and that we build on that. And when we've got that 5-year funding programme, you're absolutely right. There will be what we describe as a functional strategy that will be informed by business that will shape how that funding is going to flow over those 5 years. And I would imagine that will be a key topic to come back to this board in the months ahead as to what exactly that functional strategy around local growth in place is going to look like.
Thank you. Adrian.
Chair, I think Corin was just before.
Sorry, Corin, I didn't see you. Corin,
first. That's okay. Just on Steve Simpkins' point, if you want to talk to businesses, there are literally hundreds of business-led organisations across the West Midlands, every sector, every size, from our technology parks to our science parks to our trade organisations and chambers and FSB. We do it all day, every day, you know. So if you want to get some of that feedback from businesses, it will be free and it will be straight from the horse's mouth as well.
Thank you for that, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite useful that Corin did go first because it was part of my point actually that, you know, we've been doing this through the local enterprise partnerships for a very long time in terms of the business engagement, and I think perhaps it might be worth a refresh about what is actually happening, what is actually out there, and what's being done over the numerous years. Because I'm pretty confident, particularly in the Black Country, that knowledge of that business engagement with the demise of the LEPs has not been lost. It is actually being sort of spread around the different local authorities, and I'm assuming that's the same in with the Birmingham LEP and the Coventry LEP, where this kind of thing has been done for quite a while.
Yeah, we'll note the comments in the minutes. Thank you. That's helpful. I'm going to the recommendations. The updates be noted and the proposed approach to delivering additional support to West Midlands business be agreed. Are we all content at this stage? Thank you. I'm going back now to Yanis, if you're there, with regard to the item 6, overview and digital economy workstream presentation. We'll defer. We'll defer. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. For employment. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not great at reading notes. Okay. So what do you want me to do? Sorry.
Yes, Chair, just in relation to item 10, there's a slight amendment to recommendation 3. Delegated authority should be to the interim director for employment, skills, health and communities in consultation with the section 151 officer and monitoring officer to make the selection for decision for the partnerships.
So that's just, sorry, that's an amendment to the recommendation 3 within the paper.
It's just the slight wording as to how the report recommendation is written, Chair.
We'll note that. That's fine. Okay, so item 10 on the agenda, Further Education Innovation Fund. Who's speaking to this?
Hi, Chair.
Thank you.
Stephen Heels, Innovation Policy Manager at West Midlands Combined Authority. So one deliverable of our deeper devolution deal text relating to innovation was to generate an action plan with Innovate UK. And this was to deepen opportunities to work together around our plan for growth. That plan was brought to this board in July and it was launched at Wolverhampton University some weeks afterwards. As a first opportunity arising from that plan, we've negotiated a £2.5 million fund from Innovate UK for our further education colleges in the WMCA area to work with our small businesses to help them to adopt technology and access the skills they need to do that at greater pace. So FE colleges are committed to working in partnership with Business Growth West Midlands and our local authority growth officers to make sure that this reaches or the opportunity reaches all of our businesses across the whole conurbation. So the funding call is set to open in October, and Innovate UK as the national funding body will assure those bids that come in from our colleges. WMCA is then invited to make the final local selection for projects. This model of working follows how we work with Innovate UK on the Innovation Accelerator pilot earlier in the year that also came to this board. So the committee is invited to offer any advice for how we go about maximising the impact of this fund across the conurbation, and as already been noted, to enable us to make quick selection decisions in line with government processes. Recommendation 3 asks for delegated authority of the local selection decision, as noted at the start. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? No. Steve, Councillor Simpkins.
Yeah, I know that it's a small additional fund and we welcome everything that comes in. How is it going to be devolved across the 7 Mets? And how does it enhance what we do, especially if we can marry it up to the investment zone bits? That would be really, really useful for us to do that. But I note that we shouldn't enter into a competition against the colleges and the FEs, because it should be where the greater need is. So if there's a disparity, then surely it should be used there. But again, I note how small that fund is considering the 7 authorities. 2.5.
It's actually 25% of the national pot, to be fair. So in the overall scale of things,
Well, that tells you everything, Chair.
well, it does, but equally we've not done too bad when you consider it. Stephen, I'm going to go back to that. How is it distributed? Just so that we're clear.
Yeah, so Innovate UK are really clear that bids have to come in from further education colleges directly, but we are working really hard, and David's on the screen as well, to convene our colleges to work in sensible consortia to maximise the impact of this. David, did you want to say a word or two on where we're at?
Yeah, so to respond directly to Councillor Simpkins, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're looking at sub-regional bids through a collection of colleges. So, for instance, the Black Country colleges coming together alongside Birmingham and Solihull and Coventry and Warwickshire to pitch into this, so that we've not got competition between the colleges.
Okay. Helpful. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So the recommendations are listed on page 49 with the amendments proposed by Wendy as the clerk. Are we all content at this time to approve? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. We therefore move to item 11, which is the Major Events Fund. I think illustrates Councillor Court's point about the amount of paper that's been associated with it, but there we go. So you're dealing with this, are you, Caroline?
It's Pip Abercrombie, actually.
Sorry, it's
don't
my fault. I'm terrible with faces.
No, it's my fault. It's on the papers as Caroline, but actually, unfortunately, she's not very well today. So this is a paper to provide an update on the progress of the Major Events Fund and ask for your approval on a number of items that have already been reviewed in detail and approved by the Major Events Advisory Group across the West Midlands. The governance structure and the guiding principles that were in Appendix 1, the process flow and timeline that were in Appendix 2, and the application form, which includes the scoring mechanism and the agreed criteria that were in Appendix 3. Also to note that the list of applications received, scored and reviewed will then be prioritised and brought to EGB in November for your approval following review by the advisory group. Just to update you that the Major Events Fund Programme business case was approved by the Investment Board on the 24th of July. In parallel, owing to the urgent nature of the opportunity, a project business case for Sport Accord, due to happen in April 24, requiring 3 million from the Events Fund, was approved by the Combined Authority in July as well. The Major Events Advisory Group first meeting was held on the 4th of August, and each local authority has at least one member in this group. Councillor Adrian Andrew was elected chair of that group, and the membership of that group is detailed in Appendix 4. The Major Events Advisory Group approved the following, which is now being put forward for your approval. Governance. Appendix 1 lays out the governance showing that the Major Events Advisory Group reports into EGB for ultimate approval, supported by the Growth Company as Secretariat. Guiding principles details the principles that have been developed by experts in their field to evaluate potential suitability of an event. It's similar to frameworks that exist in Birmingham and other cities. The principles clearly define the 3 possible categories of event, followed by 7 values seen as critical for major events of the region to incorporate to be successful. The application form has been developed based on asking for data and questions that evidence the event's ability to deliver against these guiding principles and the outcomes detailed within them. Detailed guidance notes have been developed to support this application form, as well as meetings between the Growth Company and all local authorities to support this process. All applications to the Major Events Funds are due by end of play today, as per an extended deadline agreed by the Major Events Advisory Group. The Growth Company will then process the applications through the scoring mechanism, which is automatic in the main, and will produce a score against each application. We will then do a review of all applications and scores and produce a full prioritised list with a recommended shortlist. The advisory group will review this list and recommend the shortlist for a proposal to the November Economic Growth Board. Once the shortlist is approved by the Economic Growth Board, it will follow the DSO process at the Combined Authority, and funding agreements will be created by the Combined Authority with the local authority hosts. It is expected that this one call for funding will fully utilise the remaining £3 million of the Major Events Fund. However, if that's not the case, the advisory group would discuss and consider a second round of applications. Following approval of all funding, the Major Events Advisory Group will pivot to become a programme board following all agreed funding to continue to monitor and evaluate progression of all events that have been funded. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Congratulations, Adrian, in getting the chair. The other members are listed in page 62 for information. Do you want to add anything at this stage or any questions? No.
I think sort of from our perspective, we do want to make sure that, you know, this impacts the whole region in a way. You know, certain areas have got the facilities in order to put these major events on, and we need to, as a region, rather than being sort of geographically specific and parochial, we need to make sure that these major events are successful for the whole of the West Midlands region. I mean, for example, I'm probably a good example to be the chair of this group because Walsall got nothing out of the Commonwealth Games whatsoever, and you've heard our leader say exactly that. So I do think it's important that we do make sure that it hits all parts of the region.
Thank you. Comments, questions? No, we're all quite content. There are a couple of specifics we need to do. EGB is asked to approve the documents previously approved by the Major Events Fund Advisory Group. I think that's a question that's been raised today. And EGB is asked to note the November EGB, 16th of November, will receive a prioritised list of projects for consideration and approval, which is listed at 4.3 in the next steps element of the papers. And the recommendations are listed at page 55. Are we all content? Councillor Courts?
Yeah, I'm content, but please don't expect me to approve and agree an application form. I'm really not going to do it.
I think it was just for, you know, in essence, to show everybody what the process was, but I think the point's well made. Thanks, Pip. Thank you for that. So I think we've got agreement. Thank you. I'm therefore going to move to item 12, which I've got as David. David, remotely, you're going to present this paper, are you? I believe leadership and management skills in the workforce. David, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll quickly go through the highlights of this report. Often through a whole range of different reports, deficits in leadership and management skills is cited as a barrier for improved productivity and growth. And recently, 3 reports in the West Midlands, one from the CMI, one from the University of Warwick, and our own LSIM have cited feedback from SMEs that they're seeing challenges in terms of their skills, leadership management skills, in being able to support transformational change within their business, such as tech adoption, such as driving to net zero. There are a lot of activities which the Combined Authority are already doing through its deployment of a range of skills packages, such as the Made Smarter programme, such as our own adult education budget, and also through our apprenticeship levy transfer fund. However, there is more that we can do, and I think that we're now at a point where I need to propose that we do that with more precision in terms of targeting specific areas in leadership management training where we need to support our SME businesses and drive inclusive growth. So I'm proposing that we go with 4 options to do just that. Firstly, how we focus on aspiring leaders and our future leaders from underrepresented groups, so in terms of BAME communities, but also females and also individuals who've got disability who've seen their lack of management skills training as a barrier to enable them to progress within business. There is also a focus on strategic leadership. It was an area certainly focused on from the LSIP report that many of our businesses are struggling to grow, especially where we have what is known as accidental leaders, those leaders who have actually progressed from the floor, potentially into management positions, who don't have that leadership training to enable them to continue their work and their growth within the business they're operating within. And also want to focus on healthy and inclusive leadership. How can we ensure that our businesses are productive and that staff are retained, but also be able to recruit from underrepresented groups? And earlier today, we talked about youth unemployment. There's an area there about how do employers actually recruit from young people into their business. And then finally, there's an element about how do we broaden out our Made Smarter programme, because at the moment Made Smarter is very much focused on engineering and manufacturing. How can we broaden that out to into other sectors around adopting technology to support their growth? So those are the proposals there. What I'm proposing to do is invest £3 million through a competitive tender exercise through our DPS to secure providers from an independent training provider market who can deliver those products. But in addition to that, I'm also wanting to work with all of our colleges in establishing that offer across those 4 lines, so that we've got an offer available through our colleges in each of our local localities, supporting the local business community. How I then tend to take that to market is using our business growth West Midlands model, so that our business advisors can actually go out to businesses to encourage them to take up the leadership management training offer available to them. Thank you, Chair.
I read the paper with interest. I think it's very supportive of what it's proposing to do through the £3 million AEB. Any questions or comments? Councillor Courts.
Yeah, absolutely supportive of the need for this area of training. It's, one of the most important things we could ever do, and I thoroughly support it. I'm interested. It's 3 pages actually, which is. How do we know these are really the things that a business out there thinks is important? Let me just give you 2 things. Leadership and management. It's not just about the bigger car and the rest of it. It's actually about motivating the people, getting the best out of people, helping people to develop themselves. It's a matter of wood and trees, as you go up the train, up the management, you need to be looking at the wood, not the trees. I always, in terms of management, I always say, how is this role adding value to the overall effort and the overall management? I think this is a very public sector orientated way of looking at it. And I think you want to ask the question, is this what business out there thinks are the right strands? But we need to get on with it.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to flag the mental health, the Midlands Engine Mental Health Productivity Pilot have been doing quite a lot of work with line managers in this space. I mean, I noticed you've talked about healthy and inclusive workforces, but I think what the data's shown there, I think they've interviewed over 3,000 businesses over the course of 3 years, is that line managers have a huge amount of pressure in terms of formally and informally managing the mental health of their workforce. So I would, I'd exactly the point. Yeah, I'd really want to see something that links up with that and appreciates that actually these leaders of the future will be doing a lot of that management and having to look after their own mental health as well.
Stress.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, this is a direct result of the local schools improvement plan. This is a piece of work that's come out of that. So I think it is to be welcomed, particularly for SMEs who don't always find access to this level of advice to be available to them. So I think taking a proactive approach in doing that will be helpful to those organisations, having come myself from that particular sector. Anyone else wish to add? Oh yeah, Corinne, I think is on the screen. Thank you.
And thanks, David, for this. It's a really important paper, and as we've just been discussing, the LSIP absolutely highlight this as a key issue for local businesses. In a lot of the roundtables we did, particularly the smaller businesses, they all cited gaps in project management. Particularly, they didn't know where to go as well to get good quality skills, leadership training, which was a big deal for them. And a lot of them felt they were being held back from a productivity perspective, a sales perspective, because they had gaps in their leadership team. So I think it's a really important work. What I would say, David, is that we've got some really good providers who can deliver this. The weighting really needs to be towards the business engagement side as well, because not only you've got to convince the businesses to get engaged and do the training when they've got the quite tight for time at the moment for various reasons, you might be introducing clients to them that they're not normally used to working with as well. So I think how we weight the business support side with what sounds like a really exciting project will be key to success. But well done, mate.
Thank you.
Do you want to come in and add anything?
I wondered, Sharon, you might want to introduce yourself and whether you on this topic.
I think that would be helpful. So,
and I wondered whether you might have some particular comments on the kind of leadership that we need in the region.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that. That was very thoughtful. I am the independent chair of the Race Qualities Task Force for the West Midlands. So some of you I have not yet met, but I'm very much looking to do so on a one-on-one basis. I've listened to this conversation so far with great fascination, and a number of things have struck me, if I may be so bold. The first is the non-white population across the West Midlands. Can anybody confirm to me what that percentage is? 45%. Yeah, I look around the room and I look at the screen and I think, how representative are we? And so do we have the people at the table that need to be making some of these decisions? Is a real question I have. And I feel a bit awkward saying this because it's uncomfortable, difficult and complex. But a lot of the decisions we're making is about the whole populace and it's not represented. So that's a big point I'd like to raise. And as to this paper, I'd like to discuss this with the officers involved and others. And I'll leave it there.
In answer to your point, the first point about representation around this board, there are a number of people who've not been able to come today, and you may have seen a different mix had those people been able to come. So we take the point, and it's well made, and thank you for making it.
But I would like to make that point across everybody we have. I'm very interested in looking now at who's represented and where, because what we can't say is we have a lack of talent. We have first, second, third and fourth generations in this region, yet I'm not seeing them represented. And that has to change.
And it's a point well made. Councillor Courts, please.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point and a very welcome point. I mean, and it's difficult, isn't it? It's getting the people that you want round the table. I mean, I'm from the building industry, which is probably about 5% female content. The gender imbalance there is difficult, but how do you attract people in there? And it's something we've really got to work at.
I'd be delighted to speak to you about that, Councillor Court, separately if you'd like, because I'm looking at the construction industry and have just come across an incredible group of individuals who are changing that and indeed doing great work, but might not be in the networks that we're used to seeing.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Right, I'm then going to move to the last item on the agenda today, which in essence is just for noting. About the work programme.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So it's a work programme for noting, but Ed wants to make a point. Ed, please.
Just to say that when we sent out the report with the work programme, we hadn't at that point had a chance to review it along the lines that my response to Councillor Courts earlier on about the numbers of items coming to each meeting. One of the things that we are proposing that we do for the November meeting, for example, is to group a number of the issues together in order to do a deep dive on sustainability and the economy, so that actually we can see things in the round rather than multiple different papers on different topics that have a relationship with one another. So that's just one example as to what we're going to do. I've also noted from this meeting that you're keen to have a deep dive on youth unemployment, so we can build that into the forward plan as well. So just to say, there will be some minor changes to the programme that you've got in front of you, but we'll bring a refreshed version to the next meeting.
Anything to add, Jonathan? No, that's fine. Thank you. On that basis, I'm going to close the meeting. The next meeting on the 16th of November, when Councillor Simpkins will be in the chair, and I'll probably be sitting where he is. But thank you very much.
Well done, Chairman. Well, 15 minutes back. Oh, amazing. It is.